The answer is solution.
I think I have a slide entitled that.
I've got it.
All right.
Good job.
So go to the computer, see if I can increase the brightness. There we go. It's a little bit better. Alright. And slideshow up too.
Yeah.
Alright, so you know me,
Yeah.
and you know what I'm doing,
But another day.
and you know what you guys do.
Yep.
So I'll skip those two. So what my research focused on, and kind of the three things that I came up with as problems, was locating and finding sourcing volunteers, recruiting them, and then retaining them. So those are the main points. And so kind of the final step in that is putting them all together and then managing it. So I'm gonna try to figure out a system that we can, with both of our efforts and several other people's efforts, hopefully, come up with a sustainable way to manage a program. So the purpose of my secondary research, which was essentially just looking at kind of case studies, peer-reviewed articles of what works and what doesn't.
Did you find some case studies?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I have also a rather lengthy document for you, which was my official research paper for this. So I'll give you that. You can look through it after.
You bet. Okay.
And I've got a good amount of sources in there with some good findings. So the secondary research covers all that, and then my primary research was the survey. I don't know if you saw that. So,
How many responses did you get?
I got 10 on the one that you filled out. So, yeah, so that's one of the things we'll get into is just making the survey questions kind of more specific to what we want, and then getting it out in a much broader sense. This was kind of rushed, the nature of the course. So anyway, the primary research was in a few different surveys and questionnaires, and then I just basically analyzed those results. And I designed and distributed them myself for the most part, and with Kit and so. So nationally, so I have, I don't know if you can see that, Arkansas in the U.S. So the U.S. is in the red line. Arkansas has had kind of ups and downs, as you can see, with volunteers and rates, and then this is the Arkansas kind of breakdown of where volunteers lie.
That's interesting.
Yep.
Veterans are not in on this.
Yeah, so I was kind of picturing they'd fall into social service maybe and civic.
Yes.
Or unknown. So that's, if you put all those together, that's
Right.
almost a quarter.
Right.
So we can see more detailed breakdown of that in a minute. So I listed more problems for us. So aside from the national and statewide, kind of dilemma of low volunteering. So your problems more or less. So the young organization is, of course, low visibility. And one thing that I kind of came across was people know, the United Way, the Red Cross, all the big players, and that's their first thought when they think of volunteer. And kind of as a lack of creativity, I think,
Yes.
on the nation's part.
Yes, and I actually have, I may have already told you this, but, my personal opinion is that one of the values that Soldier On gives back to the community is a means by which they can give back. Because when you talk with our volunteers, a good many of them, one, never volunteered before, and two, didn't know how to, because you go back to that, you want to be in a United Way. Well, go be a United Way person. They actually put you through an obstacle course.
Right.
And they're a big conglomeration removed from actually providing services to their clients.
Right. And it's, yeah, that removes it from like kind of the small town, the community
Yes,
aspect,
right.
which we need here.
Right. Good job so far.
Thanks. So you've had a lot of great opportunities with publicity and stuff like that. And then there's, of course, the low funding, and kind of along the same lines as the low visibility is low credibility, which, you know, is just an age-related thing, of course. There's nothing wrong with us here.
Well, no, and quite frankly, that's what the auditor said. The one criticism that they had was they said that they give it to all small nonprofits, and that's because you don't have enough funding to pay for having multiple people in a accounting control perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I have one bookkeeper who gets on the mail. If you're a larger organization, you would have a person who gets the mail, records what the mail is,
Right.
and so that
You have a cross-check between
right,
them all.
exactly. And as a small organization, there's nothing we can do about that.
Right.
Other than, as you just noted in your slide, volunteer in a important position.
Yeah, and that's a very high capacity for just a level volunteer.
Exactly.
That's another thing I'll cover here in a minute. So this is just kind of more on the research. So this is kind of like a breakdown of my specific methods that I use, and you'll find a lot more detail in there.
Yeah.
That's the questionnaire content, which you can find in appendixes in there at the end. So this was a few interesting responses to the survey. So fortunately, everyone who responded all was interested, and was not interested.
Self-selected.
Right. So, and one thing I wanted to put in here was the amount of time they'd be available. So obviously a lot of people chose, you know, less than 5 hours a week. But that's still a good start. So that was one of the main things that these surveys kind of showed to me was kind of like an opportunity to recruit people, more or less. So one of the questions, as you saw, was, you know, what's your contact information? Would you like to know more? So with that, that's one of the first 4 respondents from that question. And then kind of background on
That's
there.
interesting. So there is a fair, what's that, 40% in non-handed?
Yeah.
Well, that is us for sure.
Yeah. So half and half, almost.
Yeah.
Experience and non-experience, and then I didn't, you know, go into detail of what that was and how much that was. It could have been just volunteering for a day, so that's another thing we might want to add to a more detailed survey.
Right.
And then everyone wanted to know more, which was great. So that was the survey side. And I have a kind of lengthy list of solutions here that I came up with rather quickly through this couple weeks that I've been working on this. So this goes back to kind of the first slide of identifying the volunteers and where we're going to get them from. Advertising the positions, and I think if we kind of went with more of a job description as specific, more formal approach, I think that would yield kind of the higher level volunteers we're looking for. For example, you know, you're talking about the reviewers, and
Right.
if they do that for their job, then they could do that on a Saturday.
Right.
And it certainly wouldn't take much more time than that.
Well, and the lady who's been working on our website as a volunteer, her value that she's given us, if I had to go spend the money on buying a new website, it probably would cost me $10,000. As a result, it's free. We like free. We like free.
Yeah, I saw the website. It looks great.
It's a lot better.
Yeah. And then I think kind of along those same lines is making a more formalized description of volunteers. So instead of, you know, hey, we need volunteers this weekend for whatever, that can be certainly a level that we would need, but kind
we
of
actually
have,
need these
right.
specific.
So have, you know, background verification specialist, and then whatever, right? So specific job descriptions, and then go and find in organizations, whatever, recruit these specific volunteers. So specifically targeting and searching for these types of volunteers. And then sustaining and increasing levels of volunteers, of course, is important. Actively targeting them, and then target different groups differently. So basically that means, kind of target the mass campaigns like we're doing with, hey, we just need general volunteers, and then kind of on a more specific...
I've always preferred niche marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. On a more specific approach, go up to the individual person and kind of, wine and dine them, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely.
So, kind of the obvious places to look are high schools, colleges, businesses, other nonprofits. But I think one thing that's important to note is looking for like a specific individual in all those. That would be like one source, one point of contact, and then from there they can do the work and branch out.
Yes.
So if you go to a college,
Yes.
find the person in charge of all the organizations, and then
Yes.
they can distribute,
Yes.
rather than going to each individual one.
Absolutely.
So try to spread the work to other people.
Yeah, absolutely.
As much as possible.
Delegate.
And then there's the kind of the leading position, right, for all this, and the kind of the human touch, the following up, as I said, wining and dining, going beyond the phone call, even though that's much more time consuming. And I think as we get volunteers, we can kind of reinvest them back into this. And
Surely.
if you have
Surely.
a PR specialist that works for Tyson or Walmart or
Right.
what have you, they would be great at this, or someone who does that, recruiting for them even, right? And then back to the creating specific roles for the volunteers in the organization, and then creating a standardized kind of practice for all the parts. So instead of just kind of a haphazard approach, we would create like an actual system. So that would be human manpower system, and then technological
Right. Such as
database of some sort.
Salesforce.org.
Right. And so that can either be something that we create in-house, or it can be something that...
Salesforce.org is actually volunteered to donate their software to us.
Okay.
Laura Guntner, have you had a chance to speak with her?
Very briefly.
Yeah. See her more.
I would like to.
Well,
She seems like a good person to know.
She's a very good person. She's very anyway, she's doing all the evaluation. So if you look at our volunteers as customers,
Mm-hmm.
it has the ability to set all of the triggers and various things like that, so that you can actually track and generate a customized mass individual thing.
Right.
Because it really is. It's I have no problems being thankful, because if I'm turning around, I'm thankful. Somebody came out, what's his name? Tyler came out here and rush hogged us yesterday. Thank you, Tyler. We don't have to worry about that no more.
Mm-hmm.
And we're no longer an eyesore. But as with brothers and sisters and such, you take people for granted and you don't tell them just how grateful you are. Okay, sorry.
That's pretty much it, I think.
Okay.
So I wanted to make this as not even that. It won't cost anything because it can't, right? So.
I like you.
That's
So
the important part.
that is kind of constricting, but at the same time, I think that can kind of invoke a lot of ingenuity. So
Surely.
so there is that, and I think that's all I've got for you.
Okay. Well, how do I get you to get an A on this? Because I think this is super duper hot now.
So, I believe my professor sent you an email with
Yep.
some sort of survey questionnaire thing.
Yep.
So fill that out,
Yep.
and that'll be a small percentage of my grade.
Okay. Done.
I appreciate it.
Done.
And this will be a big